Hello, listeners. That's music from the band The Westerlies from their album, Wherein Lies the Good. And this is Dave Douglas from the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep. Welcome. I'll be talking to trumpeter, composer, arranger Riley Mulherkar about the Westerlies and about his own music projects. We'll also talk about the Festival of New Trumpet Music, newly online this year. It will run 10 nights from September 8th to 17th with pre-recorded shows from over 30 trumpeters. We'll talk about some of those events in the conversation. Everyone's all set to vote, right? Don't forget that we're still going to have to advocate for change even after the election. But wouldn't it be nice to have leadership that listens to scientists, that values truth, that recognizes inequality, and that is open to empathetic dialogue? Just got to mention that. Be there. And now to the music. Join us as a subscriber at Greenleaf Music by visiting greenleafmusic.com, and you can email me directly at podcast@greenleafmusic.com. Thanks for listening. Riley, thanks so much for joining me. That piece was Weeping Mary. Is that your arrangement?
That is an arrangement that Andy Clausen put together, one of our trombonists. And it's an arrangement that was inspired by an adaptation by Sam Avedon, who's a favorite influence of ours for all things folk music, improvised music, bread and puppet theater music, that whole lineage of music.
Did you play with bread and puppet theater?
I wish. I've been to the theater. I'm a big fan, but never gotten to play. You've done some.
I did. I toured with them for a couple of years.
Yeah. Can this podcast be me interviewing you, asking all about that time?
I'm afraid not, Riley. I'm afraid not. I'm really happy you could join me because we have a lot to talk about. And first of all, for me, it's just the Westerlies. I admire so much the collaborative group that stays together and does a lot of projects and works hard, but it seems like a real team effort.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. It is a nice little microcosm of all the things that are great and difficult about democracy. But I'm, really proud to be in the group and, dedicated to the work we've been doing. And it's been wonderful, the connection that we've had you over the years. I remember in our early days, I don't know how we convinced you to come by Juilliard one night and hear us and give us some pointers, but ever since then.
You snuck me into Juilliard after hours.
We snuck you in. And
it was,
and ever since then,
how I met you is because Andy Clausen came to some Chamber Music America talks that I was involved in, and he came up and introduced himself. And then I met all of you at that time. It was Zubin was in the band, Zubin Hensler, but Willem de Cook, and now you have Chloe Rollins.
Yeah.
And the group, I don't know how well you remember the session, but you guys were playing your music for me, and it was already so amazing, and I was struggling to find something to say. And I remember, and this is sort of cogent to talking about this new record of yours, Wherein Lies the Good. I was like, so have you guys decided if you're jazz or you're classical? And yeah.
And we're still asking ourselves that.
Yeah, you didn't have a good answer then either.
I think maybe we have figured out that we're a classical group of jazz musicians. Does that work? It feels like our structures are very classical in terms of how we work, but we're absolutely jazz musicians, and I don't think the music would work if we weren't improvising, composing jazz musicians with that sort of pre-improvisation mindset.
Well, it's really communal music in the sense that, everybody has to be a performer and arranger, composer at the same time.
Totally.
And you guys, having played with you, everybody's able to adapt in real time. And it's the hallmarks of a great chamber music group, let's say.
Right. I think chamber music is a great descriptor because it's a larger umbrella, maybe a more apt description of what we're trying to do than classical, because it's more about the communal sense. It's more about the listening and reacting to the person who's breathing and making sound right next to you. And that's in all the best jazz music. That's in all the best music pretty much, except for right now, in the era of Zoom music. You can't really hear people breathing and making sound right next to you.
Yeah, you have to create that.
Right.
You have to create that. The format of 2 trumpets and 2 trombones, was that by design, or was it just that you guys enjoyed playing together and it just came about that way?
Yeah, that was purely coincidence. We often say that if we had played bass, drums, guitar, keys, we would have been a band as well and probably making very different music. But it was more born out of the friendships. All 4 of us original members were born and raised in Seattle, went through the really strong music programs in Seattle public schools, specifically the jazz programs. Although actually, the classical programs there were extraordinary as well. So we got to know each other actually. 3 of us went to one high school, and Andy, who we just mentioned, went to our rival high school. So we would see Andy at all the festivals, and we would compete with him at all the band competitions. And by the time we were seniors in high school, we were already good friends, and we had started playing outside of school. Andy was an avid composer from jump pretty much. So he would have us over to his house when we were in 10th grade, 11th grade, reading new charts and improvising and then composing based on material that we had improvised. So it was all this stuff that is so much still a part of our process now, but I feel lucky that we were exposed to it early on.
Wasn't also Willem's family involved in organizing for music education also?
Absolutely, yeah. And Willem's mom has been executive director of an organization called Seattle Jazz Ed, which was actually founded along with my dad. So it's all very much in the family. And that organization was founded as we were on our way out of Seattle. And after seeing how meaningful the music education and the music programs we've been involved in Seattle were for us, that all the equity problems were super apparent. And to them as parents looking at the situation, thinking like, what about all the kids and families who don't happen to live within the school zones that allow them to go to these schools, or don't happen to be in whatever the accelerated programs are that fast track them into certain opportunities? How do we get that same level of music education to them? So they started this program, and they started with literally the same teachers that were doing these programs in the public schools and taking these bands across the country, and even on European tours. I was touring Italy in 10th grade, which is just bizarre to think about as playing music. So super privileged, and so they literally just got those teachers and said, after school, can you lead a big band? Can you lead some ensembles? So you had a great program out there, great educators like Clarence A. Cox, Robert Knapp, Wayne Horvitz, just a lot of musicians, a lot of teachers lending their time to this program. And it's really built to a pretty large organization over the past 10 years.
So there's an activist element to it then, it sounds like.
Totally.
Everything that you guys came out of.
It's, Seattle's one of those places that's like very liberal on paper, but huge racial equity problems within the city in terms of housing, in terms of education, in terms of opportunity. So it was very much founded out of, like, how do we solve some of these problems? How do we, close some of these opportunity gaps?
Were you involved with Earshot also?
Yeah, Earshot has long been, the presenting organization in Seattle that has championed music, both in terms of bringing outside musicians to the city. So many of the concerts I went to and festival that happens there every year were Earshot concerts, and that was my exposure. But then Earshot is also, super engaged in opportunities for local musicians, which is cool. That it's not just all about, whoever the big names are on the road.
National acts, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I, having played, been presented by Earshot many times, and it was something that I always noticed. When you come in from out of town and you see that there are local artists being presented, and actually, didn't we play together there once? It was before we did our project.
Well, that was
with my quintet, and then you Westerlies came up and joined us, and we did a couple tunes that way.
Yeah, that was such a great night, and that was a perfect example of, what's so great about an organization like Earshot and their vision, where you were like one of the headliners for the festival, but we were this young group of Seattleites, so they give us the opportunity to open, and then you invited us to collaborate. So all these dots, they're people who sort of see the bigger picture. It's wonderful when they can connect the dots in that way, because for young musicians, that's what makes it happen for you. Those are the doors that open for you.
Yeah. And you guys, you people and the Westerlies are doing a thing called brass activism now. Can you tell me what that is exactly?
Yeah. We call it brass roots activism, a little play on words.
Like it.
And it's an ever evolving thing, but we just sort of made it our mission to try to align both the work that we do with our values, and then also to engage in work that may be outside the musical realm that furthers the causes that we believe in. So sometimes that involves lending our music to causes, or using our whatever we can offer as music presenters or as people in the world of music to help bring people together for a cause. There's an organization we've been partnering with in Seattle called Common Power. That their goal is to provide, they call them civic on-ramps. So it's like, if you don't know how to get involved, you don't know what to do, but you want to do something, they provide really great opportunities for you to get involved at various levels. It could be making phone calls. It could be, before the pandemic, it was a lot of times hitting the ground and canvassing, or even flying to a swing state, flying to a swing district for an important House representative race and canvassing out there. So we've been working with them, presenting some Zoom concerts to bring people together. And while people listen to music, they're emailing reps, they're phone begging, doing all sorts of stuff. And some of it has nothing to do with music. Willem and I took a trip out to Virginia last November, and barely played a note on our horns, but spent full days out canvassing. That was when Virginia was working to flip their House and Senate blue, which they did, and the effects have already been extraordinary from that. So,
well, that's great, and I've been seeing all the sessions that you guys have been leading, and it's really inspiring. So Thanks for doing that. And also thanks for, bringing your vision to the Festival of New Trumpet Music, which will be opening September 8th. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to listen to a little bit of your music. So I'm going to play Entropy 1 from the new album. Beautiful. What a great brass sound.
Thanks. I mean, that piece is funny for us because that's more in the sort of classical vein than I think that's sort of at the far end of that spectrum for us. So, in live shows, that one's a tough one. I'm always.
You mean because there's no improvising, or because you have to
just play the type of technique? It's like very much like trying to play. What's that composer that those duets like Telemon, trying to get in that zone, and it's not a zone I go to often. So,
interesting. So then, but you wrote it, so like composition materials. A piece like this, then if this is going to be tricky for you to play, where do your materials come from?
We're certainly, I think as a group and as composers, we're certainly not easy on ourselves. We don't make life easy for ourselves. So we're often, beating ourselves up for writing music that's just hard to execute.
Yeah. But seen me do that to myself firsthand. So, but I mean, like you as a composer, a piece like that, where how are you farming your musical concepts to develop it?
For that piece in particular, it was just one of those melodies that I had stuck in my head. Who knows where it came from? It might have been original. It might have come from somewhere else. But it was stuck in my head. And so it was just like, get out the phone, record a little voice memo, take it to a piano. And that first movement I had written back in like 2012, 2013. And it never really went anywhere. And it didn't really seem like it worked as a standalone piece. It also felt a little bit corny to me. Even though I liked it, it felt a little bit like I felt like I needed to blow it up in some way. So that's the first movement of a 3-movement piece where I tried to then sort of blow it up and explore it and see what comes out.
And well, I want to play the next part of the suite in a moment. But I know that you write for other groups as well, but I'd imagine that like there's a really special influence on your composing when you're writing for the Westerlies, for the 4 brass.
Definitely. I mean, it's great. It's great writing for the Westerlies. It's fun because it's just the most sort of fundamental SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass writing. So it sort of feels like just the fundamentals, There's not a lot of, so often if I'm writing for a jazz group or if I'm writing for other groups that maybe are more conventional, you write a lot less, which can be nice, because you put a lot of faith and trust in the musicians and the performers, and you're actually more interested in where they're going to take it than what's on the paper. But writing for the Westerly, since it's 4 voices, pretty much just down the line, in terms of range, it's just like, it's very illuminating, it's very revealing, and you can't really get away with much. So it forces you to sort of just get to the core of what you're trying to write, and also the personalities of the group. We know each other very well, so we're very much writing for each other.
Right. But you have to be very specific, because there's, like you said, without a rhythm section, every moment has to sort of be carried.
Yeah.
And I could imagine that always writing for that format, very challenging.
Yeah, there are things about it that get easier over the years, and then there are things about it where you feel like, there are a couple things that I go to all the time, but if I'm trying to get out of that, I can hit a wall.
I was going to ask you if you felt like there was a Westerly style.
I think we're trying to,
at least for yourself, let's say. For yourself as a composer.
For myself, there are definitely some harmonic things that I go to maybe too often, in terms of how I like voicings to sound for us, for our timbres, for our sound.
Yeah.
It's close harmonies. It's, really simple bass movement and really close tenor, alto voices, like half step apart or whole step apart, and then a melodic line in the soprano. So more I find myself trying to think of how to get away from that, because I'm going to fall into it eventually in some way.
Interesting. Okay, let's listen to a little more. So that's Entropy 2. What does the title refer to?
There are some complex complex scientific definitions of entropy and the laws of entropy in the process. But then I think there's also just the more generalized idea of entropy being the tendency of things to fall apart and the tendency of things not to hold together, which, sort of felt like what I was trying to do to this piece, and also felt like, this piece was written a few years ago, this movement was written a few years ago, but it felt apt even so, in terms of this country or basic ideas or philosophies we may think or take for granted, or etc.
Interesting, because it's also like it sounds to me like somebody's improvising there against a series of written parts. And is that you improvising?
That's me. It's a written sort of ostinato, and the idea was for it to be adjacent to the rest of the group. So trying in some way to have it actually be completely unrelated, as if it were, a split screen and one thing happening that is not at all cued or coordinated to what else is happening.
Interesting. That's hard to pull off with just 4
single
line musicians, but it really comes across. People are going to have to get the record to hear the third part of your suite. And
leave them wanting more, leave them hanging.
Wherein Lies the Good is the name of the record. And so you mentioned Falling Apart with Entropy, and then Wherein Lies the Good puts across a very different vibe.
Right. And that title comes from a piece that we adapted by Robin Holcomb, who was, one of our favorite composers and musicians. We just, before this whole pandemic, in the nick of time, we snuck in our annual festival out in Seattle called the Westerlies Fest. He headlined for one of the nights. And, I think that was some of the best music to listen to for the soul, not even knowing what was to come. But I'm glad it's still sort of resonating in our ears, because she's a former teacher of ours, mentor, friend, inspiration, collaborator, for sure.
Robin Holcomb. Yeah. Wonderful. You've given a lot of time and energy and thought to this year's Festival of New Trumpet Music. I think it's our 17th or 18th season. And you've been involved for a couple of years now. I'm very grateful. I co-founded the festival with Roy Campbell Jr. I think it was 2000. I don't know. It was hazy, but it's interesting that the concept of the festival came about on a night when we were doing an improvised music group, me and Roy and Baikita Carroll. And the rhythm section was Brian Carrott on vibes, Mark Dresser on bass, and Susie Ibarra on drums. And it was that fateful night that Roy and I were having a drink at the bar, and Tonic had asked me to program a month of gigs. And I was like, well, Roy, what could we do? He goes, why don't we do all trumpet players? So I was like, well, I don't know if there's So we had a bar napkin, and we started writing names of players. And it was like before very long, we were overflowing with bar napkins, and there were way too many names to fit into the 32 slots that we had. So we did it, and that was how the first, festival came about. It was very homemade. And also neither of us thought we would do it again. It was just a one-off. Like this would be a fun thing to do, and we did it. And it was the month of August, the whole month. And then when it was over, I started getting calls from trumpet players. Hey man, can I play next year? I was like, what do you mean next year? And then it just grew, and people like John Nelson, who helped us get our nonprofit status, and people like Taylor Hobynum and Micah Killian and Richard Johnson and Lucas Fry, and trumpet players. Stephanie Richards has been really involved, and she's now doing one on the West Coast based in San Diego.
Right.
And Laurie Frank, my teacher for a number of years, and I believe yours too.
Yes, when I first moved to New York.
Yeah, she was a supporter from the very beginning. And so it's brought a lot of people together, and we give an award every year. we've started to now celebrate Laurie Frink every year. For one reason is that so many of us studied with her. Another reason is that there's now a foundation in her name, the Laurie Frink Career Grant, that supports a young musician's education every other year. And so we have been presenting the quote-unquote winning artist, the recipient of the Laurie Frink Career Grant. And you were the first recipient. And I believe it was when you were still at Juilliard?
Yeah, I was just wrapping up. I think that was 2015. Yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds about right. They've announced their winner for this year, and it's Summer Camargo, and she's going to be playing in a program dedicated to Laurie Frink that you organized. Tell me about what's going to happen that night. It's September 8th, right?
September 8th. And it's
Eastern.
7 p.m. Eastern, indeed, streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. And, we've always done a night for Laurie since we lost her. And each year it sort of takes a different shape. And it depends on who the artists are and also the grant winner and all this stuff. So each year it's sort of a unique thing, but it's always nice to dedicate a night to her because, when we're paying tribute to her spirit and when we're coming together in her honor, it brings together certain people, and it's a wonderful way to just keep going her legacy. And it's always, to me, been more about the music when I think about the Laurie nights we've had over the past few years. So this year,
and I should just mention that we have some of her music too. She left some electronic music scores that are performed with 4 trumpets that she played in the festival early in its existence. So I guess we have the opportunity to present some of that as well.
Yeah, that's been a whole nother thing. We past couple of years, we've showcased some of that music. This year, we're going to include a bit of it more too. And also, since the festival is virtual this year, we're able to share some footage of Laurie and be a little bit more digital and high tech than we were in past years. So, some of the silver linings of going virtual for a festival. But we've got Cole Kamen Green, who's a dear friend of mine, someone whose music I really love. I think over the past few months since we've been locked down, I've listened to his EP with his wife, Kristen, their group Meadows. I've listened to that EP maybe more than any other album. I take it with me when I go on a run, so I listen to just the whole EP just about every day. And he's a fantastic trumpet player, former student of Laurie's. So he's put together a program. You mentioned Summer Camargo. She's the grant recipient, so she's contributing some music and some words. Rachel Terrien, a wonderful Canadian trumpet player, is contributing a set of music for that night. And we're going to mix in a little bit of Laurie's music as well, like we mentioned. So I believe that's the kickoff night of the festival, if I'm remembering correctly, September 8th.
Yep.
So it's sort of like, what better way to kick things off than, thinking about Laurie and passing the baton to Summer and new trumpet music, new trumpeters who are, fresh in New York and blowing us all away. It's perfect.
Absolutely. And is there a live Zoom chat after the
there is
element?
So that's another one of the silver linings about the virtual festival is that on select nights, we're going to have conversations with the artists. And so the Laurie night 1 on September 8th, we're going to have a live Zoom chat with the artists from the evening. And it'll be, I think like any normal post-concert talk, we'll get to talk about the music, get to talk a little bit about the process of what creating a set of music like right now is, because I think that's totally new and totally fascinating. And then also, just get to rap a bit about Laurie and share some stories.
Wow, that's great. That's great. She was so important and still is for me.
Me too. Every single day when I'm doing my exercises, it's like, where would I be without?
a great trumpeter that's teaching out of her studio now, and that's Nadia Nordhaus, and she's been involved in all of this as well, and a great teacher in that lineage and in that space, and it's just great to see. I went and took a lesson with her. It was fantastic.
I had a lesson with her too, and she really, really helped me out, so it's very cool.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I mentioned Baikita Carroll, and every year we give an award of recognition to a great pioneer and someone who's given a lot to the field, not just of trumpet playing, but of music in general, and that's represented, I think, the broad variety of what the trumpet can do in the music, of taking it out of any given box. And that's, I think, what so much of us are about, is taking the instrument and trying to find new contexts and new ways to blend it with all the music that we love and all the culture that we carry on with. And so Baikita Carroll is getting the award this year, and we're producing an evening program on September 9th that'll feature a number of videos of his performances through the years and testimonials from a lot of his collaborators and photographs and recorded music. It's really fascinating. And we're just so thrilled to be able to work with Baikita. He lives in Staten Island, and I've been talking in the process of putting this together. I've been talking to him a lot, and it's just such an inspiring composer of improvised music, jazz, theater music, electronics, really long history of brilliance. And I just thought I would play a little bit of this fairly obscure solo recording that he made called The Spoken Word. And we'll just hear a little bit of this, The Third Image. That is so great. Baikita Carroll, solo trumpet. Yeah, really inspiring. So I hope people come check that out. We should mention that it's free. We decided we didn't want to deal with ticketing and charging people in this age when we're all on lockdown, and we want as many people to see it. So Festival of New Trumpet Music is a nonprofit, and we're just going to encourage people to donate to the organization, which will just go into further commissions for trumpeters. And we commissioned over 30 trumpet players for this season. There's a series of nights with trumpet players all around the world. Bria Skonberg is leading a group that she's calling Emerging Voices. Nicholas Payton is doing a night. I'm collaborating with Dave Adewumi on a night that we share with Freddie Hendrix, who's celebrating Clifford Brown's 90th birthday. So there's just a lot going on. The Westerlies is playing, and you guys have commissioned a composer that I wasn't familiar with, and I've been so happy to hear this music, Mason Bynes. Can you tell me about what that piece?
Yeah,
that coming?
Yeah. And also, I just want to give a quick plug about the donation thing, because and I promise I have no personal stake in this because I'm not an employee of the Festival of New Trumpet Music, but I think it's so important, both in terms of investing in music that we are intaking. I think is an important practice, but also donating to support Font, because you guys are employing so many trumpet players right now. Like, these are real gigs. These are gigs that are they're not, reduced
No,
live stream internet gigs. They're real gigs, and they're supporting people right now. Yeah. And I just think it's important to shine a light on that, and props to the festival for doing that. So, but yes, Mason Bynes. We recently met Mason, and apropos to this era, we met her through Zoom, but we were introduced to her through an organization called Kinds of Kings, and a good friend of the group, the Westerlies, is the composer Shelley Washington, who's absolutely fantastic and is a member of this collective of female composers that is doing a lot of incredible work in the field of new music, and also giving platform to a lot of other young composers who were coming up. And so they created this fellowship that they called the Bowman Fellowship to, I think it's a once a year thing. And I had been talking to Shelley about, commissioning a piece by the Westerlies for the Festival of New Trumpet Music. And she pointed me to Mason, because Mason's their fellow for this year. And we heard her music, and we got to talk to her over Zoom and just, chat about ideas and about music. And it seemed like such a good fit. And so we're really excited. And she's doing a piece that is inspired by the life of Rosa Parks. And we're premiering this piece at the Festival of New Trumpet Music. And then further along, we're hoping to take it down to Montgomery, Alabama.
Wow.
We've got some presenting partners in Montgomery, organization called Clefworks, and they've been working with the Rosa Parks Museum. So we're really excited for the whole life of this piece, and the commission is coming from the Festival of New Trumpet Music. So also very grateful for the festival for making new music happen.
I can't wait to hear it. So she sent over some music that we can listen to.
This is a piece, when we were first meeting her and being introduced to her music, this is a piece that excited us. It's a piece for solo cello called Persephone. It's being played here by cellist Courtney Newton. And this is, I believe, movement 2, called Hades Pillage.
Mason Bynes, composer, and she's someone you're working with on this program for Festival of New Trumpet Music. When the Westerlies works with a composer, does it tend to be more collaborative than just they dump the score on your desk and you guys figure out how to play it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new process for us. It's our first official commission. We've worked with some composers before. We worked with a trumpet player of note a few years ago and made a record called Little Giant Still Life.
Little Giant Still Life.
This is our.
I remember that. That's my record. Yeah, but
this is our first sort of commission.
I see.
And so in a normal world, what we had hoped to do with Mason, actually before we realized that we're going to be in lockdown for the long haul, is we had planned a number of workshops to trade ideas. A lot of things that we do are very idiosyncratic, but obviously that hasn't been possible. So, we all got together on Zoom and we talked through all the specific Westerlies-esque types of things we do, our strengths, our limitations, all this sort of stuff. And she was super eager to get all of our notes. And then she went away for a month or two and came back with a draft. We recorded, remote recordings of demos from home, comped them together, sent it to her. And then she would send us a questionnaire with thoughts about all sorts of things, the music. And then she sent another draft and we'd make a new demo with trying some other things and then send it back. So it's been a process that has been very collaborative in a very sort of COVID era tech way.
Well, right. And you guys, especially Andy Clausen, I think, are pretty advanced in terms of the Zoom performances and getting live.
Yeah, Andy has really done some incredible work setting up a system for us to play in real time together. And so we've been doing almost weekly live streams where we do that.
That's great. That's so great. So I just wonder, like, we keep mentioning the COVID times, but you must have other projects going on, things coming up. What are you working on?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's very COVID specific is an Instagram show I've been producing this whole lockdown called On the Road with Riley. And that's comes out through Jazz Lincoln Center. Each week I go to a different city and talk to a musician there about what's going on. And we play a tune together. And
literally go.
I don't literally go. No, sorry. It's all figurative, since the tongue-in-cheek thing is that no one's going anywhere.
So, and through what format are you guys playing the tune?
And so the tune is put together, one at a time. I think we end up fooling a number of viewers who think somehow magically we're all playing together live, but it's definitely one at a time thing. We comp it together. But that's been a great way to, at first it was all about COVID and quarantine and the economic hit that people were taking. And then conversations changed after the murder of George Floyd and protests and demonstrations. And then still, it was great to have an opportunity just like this, to have conversations with people and get perspectives, and also, bring in the music element of it as well. So that's been ongoing. This week, I think it's on Denver, going to Denver. Got to jam with Don Clement and one of my other trumpet heroes, Shane Ensley.
Oh, great.
So he absolutely played circles around me on I'll Remember April, which was awesome.
It's already recorded. But
yeah,
you have infinite chances to go back and overdub your solo, don't you? Because everybody's in complete isolation. I think you should listen to his solo and maybe go back and think about.
I should definitely
a few more flurries and some more high notes than he did, Riley.
I should transcribe a solo and then play it right back after he played it. Like, my ear is just so good. Any 16th note I can get in regurgitate.
Sounds like an Amadeus thing. What can one say but Shane Ensley?
Yeah.
We'll say hello to him. For me, for people who don't know, Shane Inslee from the great band Kneebody. And you also guested on another one of my projects, I guess a couple years back now. The record's called Engage. And you played on 3 or 4 tracks along with Dave Adewumi, and we had some very friendly, I don't want to say trumpet battles. I don't
Dialogues.
Yeah, conversations.
Yeah.
And I featured you on one of the pieces, and I thought maybe we could go out with listening to that. So this will be Riley with my project Engage on a piece called Everywhere But Here, about the issue of healthcare in this country. And I don't know, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. You're an inspiration. I know that you recently appeared in the role of Miles Davis in a performance of Sketches of Spain with Ryan Truesdell. And that is monumental. And that would give me nightmares.
It did give me some weird dreams. But thank you, Dave. It's great to be here. And I think, I'm happy to be, following your lead in terms of all things with the festival and in terms of all things as a musician, composer, presenter, organizer. You set a path that I think is really inspiring and good for all of us younger musicians to see. And you're also a younger musician, but but to see how all-encompassing one's career can be, and I think especially in terms of the generosity side of things, of all the ways to create opportunities for other people, and especially right now, creating opportunities for trumpet players with the festival is awesome.
Well, thanks. And just to mention on the trumpet festival, we didn't mention all the details, but something really important for us, I know for you and I, but for everybody that is working on it, is to have Nicholas Payton, who it's his first appearance in the festival, and he's creating a brand new project with Sasha Masikowski that will premiere on September 17th. It's the closing night, and that's another night that there will be a live Zoom chat following the performance. So it's good stuff, and thank you so much for being part of it. And I've really enjoyed talking.
Me too. See you at the festival.
I'll see you at the festival. So this is Everywhere But Here. It's my piece, but it features Riley Mulherkar and a beautiful solo. So thanks, Riley.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for listening to the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep. Come and join us at greenleafmusic.com and visit the Festival of New Trumpet Music at fontmusic.org. Thanks.